Good day, class. Today, we are about to tackle one of most important topic that we need to understand and how it is connected to the environment and the world, the human population. Now, what comes to your mind when you hear the word human population? So class, human population, no, it refers to the number of individuals living in a particular area, from village to the world as a whole. But in most uses, population means numbers. So this module will help you understand more why there is a rapid growth in population and how it affects the natural resources and waste generation. Perspectives on population growth. As you will see later in this chapter, there is some evidence that population growth already is slowing. But whether we will reach equilibrium soon enough and at a size that can be sustained over the long term remains a difficult, vital question. Class, the global population now have reached 7.5 billion people around the world, and predicting the future of the world population is crucial. Some people believe that population growth can cause poverty and environmental degradation, while others believe that poverty, environmental degradation, and overpopulation are merely symptoms of social and political factors. Now, we will examine the different perspectives of philosophers, economists, and communists regarding to human population growth. In the 18th and early 19th centuries, philosophers broadly believed that humanity would continue growing and tilting towards utopianism, the belief in our pursuit of a state in which everything is perfect, typically regarded as unrealistic or idealistic. But Thomas Malthus, class, he is a British philosopher and economist. He argued that belief, wherein for him, population have always been invariably poor and miserable, which effectively slowed population growth. In his book, An Essay on the Principle of Population, he theorized that populations would continue to expand until growth is stopped or reversed by disease, famine, war, or calamity. The Malthusian theory was completely rejected by Karl Marx, a German philosopher who was known to be the father of communism. According to Marx, population increase must be interpreted in the context of capitalistic economic system. Marx points out that landlordism, unfavorable and high man-land ratio, uncertainty regarding land tenure system, and the like are responsible for low food production in a country. Poverty, hunger, and other ills, social ills, are the result of socially unjust practices associated with capitalism. Marx believed that capitalism was an unjust economic system that profited at the expense of those who labored in it, and by keeping its workers poor also cause high rates of population growth. Now, Joel Cohen is a professor of populations and head of the Laboratory of Populations at the Rockefeller University in New York. He explained the top 10 population trends in a world with 7 billion people. According to him, many will continue to face issues of dire poverty and the population is aging. David Pimentel added Cohen's explanation, wherein he said that by 2100, if current trends continue, 12 billion miserable humans will suffer a difficult life on Earth. On this case, birth control should be considered as a top priority to somehow reverse rapid population growth. According to the optimist, changes in the technology modify the carrying capacity of a theory as irrigation and fertilization. In agriculture, for example, or shorter rotations between crops increases the number of people who can be fed from the resource of a given theory. Now, how are we going to estimate our environmental impacts? It is then by understanding our ecological footprint. Okay? As you can see in this presentation, the optimists argue that Malthus was wrong in his predictions of famine and disaster 200 years ago because he failed to account for scientific and technical progress. But the issue here now is how are we going to estimate our environmental impacts, So knowing your ecological footprint is essential. The ecological footprint class is the only metric that measures how much nature we have and how much nature we use. Ecological footprint is the impact of human activities measured in terms of the area of biologically productive land and water required to produce the goods consumed and to assimilate the waste generated. Services provided by nature make up a large proportion of our ecological footprint. For example, forests and grasslands store carbon, protect watersheds, purify air and water, and provide habitat for wildlife. Ecological footprint measures how much land and water area we need to produce the resources we use. Things like energy, food, land for settlements, timber, seafoods, and to absorb the waste we generate. In much simpler terms, ecological footprint is the land and water area, area needed to produce the resources we use and absorb the waste we generate. On the demand side, footprint measures the ecological assets that a given population requires to produce the natural resources it consumes, including plant-based food and fiber products, livestock and fish products, timber and other forest products, space for urban infrastructure, and to absorb its waste, especially carbon emissions. The ecological footprint tracks the use of 6 categories of productive surface areas: cropland, grazing land, fishing grounds, built upland, forest area, and carbon demand on land. Now, biocapacity is the amount of biologically productive area that is available to provide the resources we use and to absorb our waste. On the supply side, a city, a state, or a nation's biocapacity represents the productivity of its ecological assets, including cropland, grazing land, forest land, fishing grounds, and built-up land. These areas, especially if left unharvested, can also absorb much of the waste we generate, especially our carbon emissions. Both the ecological footprint and biocapacity are expressed in global hectares, globally comparable, standardized hectares with world average productivity. Each city, state, or nation's footprint can be compared to its biocapacity. If a population's ecological footprint exceeds the region's biocapacity, that region runs an ecological deficit. Its demand for the goods and services that its land and seas can provide, such as fruits and vegetables, meat, fish, wood, cotton for clothing, and carbon dioxide absorption exceeds what the region's ecosystem can renew. Again, if a population's ecological footprint exceeds the region's biocapacity, that region runs an ecological deficit. Okay? Now, if a region's biocapacity, baliktad niya sa previous slide, if a region's biocapacity exceeds its ecological footprint, it has an ecological reserve. Again, if a region's biocapacity exceeds its ecological footprint, it has an ecological reserve. Now, I have a question for you. Is there really a positive effect brought by human population growth, or none at all? So while many believe that we are doomed because of rapid growing population, that would mean scarcity of resources. Julian Simon, a professor at the University of Maryland, claims that from an economic perspective, resource scarcity increases the cost of a product, thus creating incentive to find alternative material. So more people means broader markets, more workers, and efficiencies of scale in mass production of goods. Moreover, adding people to boost human ingenuity and intelligence can produce resources by finding new materials and discovering new ways of doing things. Simon also believed that people are the ultimate resource in a way that humans are creative in developing new resources by recycling old ones and discovering new solutions. Simon's belief was also supported by Bosserop's theory. For example, if a wood used in daily purposes becomes scarce, it will soon be expensive in the marketplace. Thus, people tend to look for another alternative by looking for a new material. Once a new material replaces wood, wood then becomes cheaper. Malthus Taylor states that the size and growth of the population depend on the food supply and agricultural methods. This Esther Bosserop's theory opposes Malthus by saying that agricultural practices rely on the size of the population. Then Malthus states that when food is not sufficient for everyone, the extra people will have to die. Do you agree with Malthus? That extra people, Malthus states that when food is not sufficient for everyone, for us, the extra people will have to die. However, class, Bosserop says that in those times of pressure, people will find ways to increase food production by increasing the workforce, machinery, and fertilizers. So, baliktad siya sa kang Malthus. So, the past and current population growth are very different. The question now is how many of us are here? According to the 2020 data sheet, there are already 7.8 billion people globally. How rapid does our population grow? So growth is a linear process characterized in an increase by constant amount over a period of time. In terms of population growth, the numbers of people already present always influences the number of children born in any country. The rapid growth increase was mainly caused by a decreasing death rate more rapidly than birth rate, So birth rate is a relatively higher than mortality rate, wherein nearly 5 children is being added every second and on same period, 1 person or 2 dies. By that, the variation between births and deaths signifies a net gain of approximately 2.5 additional humans per second. In the world's population, we add around 75 million more people to the globe at a rate of 1.1% per year. As you can see, the table shows the list of countries with great number of people worldwide. China currently has the world's largest population size and growth. They have been this consistent throughout the 20th century. The second world largest population size and growth is India. Projections have been made that by 2050, the number will increase to 1.63 million. Can you imagine the world's population by 2050 if all countries continue to grow in numbers? So class, you are now a future parents, So you are going or we are going to determine the factors of human population growth and how can we start the change as parents to be. Okay? So, dili lang kay sige tag anak bisan pila no. So you are a future parent, so of course you are going to determine the factors of human population growth and how can you start the change no as a parents to be. Now I want you to remember important keywords regarding the factors that determine human population growth. First factor is fertility rates. But first, let's let's no let's let's have a definition, or let's have to define what is fertility and fecundity. So, class fertility is the number of live children born to a woman, while fecundity is her physiological potential to bear children. The total fertility rate is the total number of children born or likely to be born to a woman in her lifetime. So how does fertility rates affect human population growth? For every healthy children born, many will become mature and is capable of conceiving another offspring before their parents and grandparents die. The population will continue to grow for few decades. Okay? In most tribal or traditional societies, food shortages, health problems, and cultural practices limit total fertility to about 6 or 7 children per woman, even without modern methods of birth control. As in Brazil, fertility rate have declined because of because most of the reasons no have to do with the modernization. Women are modern and they take care of their own lives. They have been so focused on raising more money or their career before having children. In China, being the highest number of population, has adopted to a one child per family. And it was observed to be effective because in 2010, their fertility rate has declined. How about in Philippines? We don't have a one child policy, no? One child per family. But we have no more than one child. Moabot pa gani og 16, no? Mga anak og 12 usa ka dosina, maabot pag 16 ka buok. Hagoy, yung saon na lang siya pagbuhi. No, class? Now, how is crude death rate differ from death rate? Death rate is simply the mortality expressed as a proportion of the population. But crude death rate is the ratio of the number of deaths during the year to the average population in that year. So the number of deaths in a population is sensitive to the population's age structure. Mortality is high among children and old people, but is commonly low among youth. The offset of mortality that in birth can also be explained through the rising life expectancy rate of many people today. So life expectancy refers to the number of years that you are expected to live from birth. Your own life expectancy changes as you grow older and as you face different risks. While lifespan is the number of years that a person lives, will have only one lifespan. So lifespan is defined as the maximum number of years that a human can live, while life expectancy is the average total number of years that a human achieves. So the oldest age that can be certified by written records was that of Jean-Louis Calment of Arles, France, who was 122 years old at her death in 1997. For most of human history, life expectancy in most societies probably was 35 to 40 years. The average life expectancy rose from about 40 to 67.2 years over the past 100 years. It is evident in the table shown that there is a global transformation in the 20th century. Through modern medicine, it has made possible for many of us to live and survive longer than our ancestors. It has been shown that the maximum lifespan has increased much. There is a greatest progress in developing countries. Longer lives were due primarily to better nutrition, improved sanitation, clean water, and education rather than to miracle drugs or high-tech medicine. So fertility is influenced by culture. A number of social and economic pressures affect decisions about family size, which in turn affects the population at large. In this section, we will examine both the positive and negative pressures on reproduction. So when we say that fertility is influenced by culture, this pertains to the cultural impact of the marriage system, family system, religious system, regional subculture, and norms concerning family. Now, people want to have children because most people believe that a family is a family in the presence of a child or children. Children somehow gives meaning to each married couple to create and mold life. The number of children in family also depends on the culture a society or country has. Some societies look upon families with few or no children with pity or contempt. And for them, the idea of deliberately controlling fertility may be shocking, even taboo. Some couple also wants to children to carry on the family name and values. These are just some of the common reasons why people want to have children. But in contrast, there are reasons that hinder the desire to have children in most couples. This includes the education and income status of many couples. Education affects the decision in the sense that most women with higher education desires more in spending time and money on other goods and activities, or simply they focus more on career and social status than having children. Income greatly affects the desire of having children and the fear of not being able to sustain the children's need, especially for education. The family income status has always been a great factor to limit the production of children in a family. Di man pwede nga magsigilang kag anak, then dili na nimo educate, di ba? Imo jud na siya pa eskwelahon. Aside sa imo pa kanon, imo jud na siya pa eskwelahon. No, because the children, they have the right, no? They have the right of a quality education. So in 1945, demographer Frank Notenstein pointed out that a typical pattern of falling death rates and birth rates due to improved living conditions usually accompanies economic development. He called this pattern the demographic transition from high birth and death rates to lower birth and death rates. It shows an idealized model of a demographic transition. This model is often used to explain connections between population growth and economic development. So this Frank Notestino was an American demographer who developed the demographic transition model. So this model class gives us a great help to understand and explain connections between population growth and economic development. So this is the demographic transition model, no? The demographic transition theory is a generalized description of the changing pattern of morality, fertility, and growth rates as societies move from one demographic regime to another. As you can see in the model, the blue curves denotes or the birth rate. Red for the crude death rate, and black for the non-curve, and the trend for the total population. The demographic transition model is divided into 4 stages. First stage is the pre-modern or pre-transition. It is characterized by high birth rates and fluctuating high death rates. No? Population growth was kept low by malnutrition, preventive and positive checks. Preventive means late age at marriage, and positive pertains to famine, war, and pestilence. That's why population is at constant level on the stage. Second stage is the early transition or birth of urbanizing or industrializing. During this stage, death rate began to fall, but the birth rate remains high, which marks the onset of rapid population growth. Third stage is the late transition or the mature industrial. birth rate starts to decline while the death rate continues to decline and the rate of population growth decelerates. Then we have the fourth stage, no, which is the post-transition or the post-industrial. So post-transitional societies are characterized by low birth and death rates and the population growth is negligible or even enters a decline. This stage class is the stage where this is already a fully developed society. Okay? Upon using demographic transitional model, some countries have tracked the remarkable success in population growth. The countries Thailand, China, and Colombia, which have a notable number in population, have already dropped more than half of their population in 20 years. Also, Morocco, Jamaica, Peru, and Mexico have low fertility rates by 30 to 40%. Surprisingly, no, one of the most successful family planning advances in recent years has been in Iran, no, a predominantly Muslim country. Now, so the following factors no help stabilize populations. So these factors no helps in stabilizing population. First is that growing prosperity, urbanization, and social reforms will help people become more focused on working and building their careers than attending to family responsibilities of having more children. Technology is available to bring advances to the developing world. This pertains to a more advanced and modern medicine to control population growth. Less developed countries have historic patterns to follow. Mistakes from other developing countries could be a mirror and basis in terms of managing population growth and its effects. And then lastly, modern communications provide information. Yes, indeed. It is now easier to educate people about the effects of rapid population growth and the ways to control it. So family planning, no, give us what? So family planning no allows couples to determine the number and spacing of their children. As the desire for smaller families becomes prevalent, birth control becomes an essential part of family planning. Family planning program benefits not only parents and children, but also the society and nation. By being able to keep the number of new births under control, allows for less population growth. Planning for a child will be of great help to avoid the social, health, and financial problem if an unplanned pregnancy happens. Modern medicine give us many more options for controlling fertility than were available to our ancestors. So reducing population growth by lowering fertility rate have been the focus of today. Thanks to modern medicine that give us more options to control fertility today than before. Today, we have given many options to control population growth through the different contraceptive methods. So, contraceptive methods have a range of benefits other than their primary purpose of pregnancy prevention. Contraception reduces pregnancy-related morbidity and mortality. It also reduces risk of developing certain reproductive cancers and can be used to treat many menstrual-related disorders. What kind of future are we creating? Because there's often a lag between the time when a society reaches replacement birth rate and the end of population growth. We are deciding now what the world will look like in 100 years. How many people will be in the world a century from now? So most demographers believe that world population will stabilize sometime during the 21st century. The United Nations projects that the global population will reach 9.7 billion people in 2050. And population growth almost coming to an end at 10.8 billion in 2100. Should we believe these projections? So now let us take a look at the population projection model of the United Nations. So this is the population projections for different growth scenarios. The population of a country grows or declines through the interaction of three demographic factors: fertility, mortality, and migration. In the graph shown, low projections suggest that world population might stabilize below 8 billion by 2050. The medium projection shows a population of about 9.4 billion in 35 years, while the high projection shows that population would reach nearly 12 billion by mid-century. Now, this successful family planning programs require significant societal changes. Number one, improve social, educational, and economic status for women. Then number two, it improve status for children. So fewer children are born, if they are not needed as a cheap labor source. Number three, acceptance of calculated choice as a valid element in life in general and infertility in particular. So the belief that we have no control over our lives discourages a sense of responsibility. And then we have the social security and political stability that give people the means and the confidence to plan for the future. And lastly, the knowledge, availability, and use of effective and acceptable means of birth control. So the map displayed shows how total fertility rates varies among countries. The shade of the country corresponds to the magnitude of the indicator. Therefore, the darker the shade, the higher the value. The map shows the average number of children that would be born per woman at the end of her childbearing year. It has been shown that nearly half the world population lives in countries where the total fertility rate is at or close to the replacement rate. Replacement rate pertains to a rate of children per woman. This results to a relative stability in terms of total numbers. So global fertility rates are general decline, and its trend is most pronounced in industrialized countries like Western Europe. To end this discussion, I want you to think and ask yourselves as the future's emerging hope, where wars, corruption, colonial history, religious tensions, and other factors have prevented the economic and social development while perpetuating high population growth. Can we overcome all these problems and create a more humane, sustainable world? Come to think of it, class. Okay, class, again. Can we overcome all these problems and create a more humane, sustainable world? Come to think of it, huh? Okay, that's all for today. Thank you for listening, class.